Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It is a little after 1 o'clock on September 15th. Going to do a quick mic check, Margot. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. How about myself?
You're clear as a bell.
All right.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks for everybody joining us. My name's Chris Horb. I'm with Kibble Equipment out of the Owatonna, Minnesota location. And Margot?
Yeah, my name is Margot Sheik. I'm sitting in the Tyler, Minnesota location today. Also work with Kibble Equipment. Spend a lot of time in South Dakota.
Cool. So just going to go over a few little logistics here. We are using Microsoft Teams, and so everybody on the call is muted, but there is a chat button on the top. Looks like a little comic book bubble above your head. You can click on that, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the event here today. If you got any questions, we have a list of things that we plan on covering, but if there's something that we didn't hit on or you need more clarity, please click on the chat button and we'll do our best to answer that. This is going to be recorded and we'll be putting it on our website after it's all done. Okay, with that, just going to go over just a high-level overview of what we plan on covering, just some resources that you can use when we're done with this meeting today. I'll touch on a few things in Operations Center to get things set up so you can spend less time hunting and pecking on your monitor when you get in the cab. And then Margot is going to turn it over and she's going to use the simulator and some of our resources to go through calibrations and display setup in the cab. So with that, I'll get out of this PowerPoint here. Okay, so a few key resources that we have available on kibbleeq.com, our website. If you just go to kibbleeq.com and then hover over service, you'll see a link on the bottom called resources. And so we have a lot of different guides. We're going to focus on Gen 4 and the S7 series combines today, but we have other guides for older machines and planters and sprayers as well. So you just click on that, and if you go to one of our locations, we do have a supply of these in a nice little printed pamphlet as well that you can take along with you and keep in your cab. Another resource when we're done with the meeting is a new app, a relatively new app called Equipment Plus. This is the website on the App Store. You can just pull up your App Store, your Google Play or Apple App Store, search Equipment Plus, all one word, and this app is replacing multiple other apps that Deere had. Deere had an app called Go Harvest, Go Bale, Go Plant, Go Spray. They have a pile of different ones, so they're integrating that all into this one app. It's basically a cheat sheet guide, crib notes version of the operator's manual, and I use it all the time. I know a lot of people at Kibble use it all the time. So just be aware that this is a new one. If you're using Go Harvest in the past, that's going to go away, and it's replaced by this app. Okay, so now switching gears a little bit, I'm going to go to Operations Center and go through some of the initial steps to get your setup file created. So first, this is Operations Center. So this is actually Margot's operation. So we're dealing with real data here. It's first a good idea before you even create your setup file to do some housekeeping. The whole importance or whole reason we create a setup file is so when you're in the cab at the edge of the field, all of your farm names are there, your guidance lines, any boundaries, and also varieties and variety locator files. So we know that things happen throughout the season where we get some garbage data or things didn't go right as we enter the data in the spring. So Deere, if you haven't been in Operations Center for a while, they have reorganized these tabs on the top to kind of be more logical as far as the tools that we would need for setup, plan, and analyze. What I like to do is first go into Analyze and just click on the Analyze button. A lot of times somebody punched in the wrong variety, or they didn't punch in a variety at all, or they maybe even planted it with the wrong crop. So I'm going to switch to seeding and switch to 2021. See, it's loading here. 2021. And I'm going to select all. It defaults to one crop. You can select all. So now you can go through all your fields real quick Is it the right crop type? That does happen, where maybe you switch from soybeans to corn or vice versa, and you forgot to switch the crop type, and we can fix that. And then the varieties. So if I just see this field on the top, corn, that's right. Margot, that's right. That field was planted in corn. Yep. And then I can just click on varieties and see the varieties that I had planted there. If for some reason one of those that does not look right, or you need to make an adjustment, and go back here. There's a lot of hotkeys or shortcuts in Operations Center to different areas. So I'm just going to click on the map button here. And this is going to take me right into Field Analyzer Beta, which is where I can correct this if I chose the wrong variety. You can also do a lot of these editing tools right in the mobile app on your phone. And actually, if you did make a blanket error across the whole field where you used the wrong variety in multiple fields, it is fairly easy to correct that in the mobile app as well. So we're relying on our good internet connection here. The spins. 1 year in Operations Center, there's a Field Analyzer Beta and Field Analyzer. We're in the beta version right now. Deere's working on merging the two. So I have my layer selected. If for some reason I bumped in here and I had the wrong layer selected or wrong year, I can just use the drop-down menu to select it. And there's a button right down here in the lower right-hand corner, right next to my varieties. It says Edit. Okay. One thing you cannot change here in Field Analyzer Beta is the crop type yet. So I have to go to Field and just a regular Field Analyzer, and I can edit that there as well. If you do have an issue where your variety locator file isn't being generated, we ran into the past where people have planted the whole crop with the wrong crop type, and so it won't generate that Field Analyzer, or excuse me, that variety locator. So here I'm in regular Field Analyzer. There's a pencil right here. And here's where I can change the variety, crop type if I screwed that up. And you can also edit area worked if it's not quite accurate. Okay, so now we've gone through the list and we made sure all our varieties are accurate. The next is to just clean up if there's any garbage fields. You would see that in Analyze as well. But where we do that is we go into Setup and then Land. And the Land tool is where we can manage field names, guidance lines, boundaries, and flags. So go through your list. See, there's a few fields that were just named corn. If I don't want those to show up in my display, all I need to do is select them and hit Archive. It's as simple as that. Same thing with guidance lines. If you have some junk guidance lines that you didn't want to show up, you find them underneath each field and you hit Archive. Okay, so now we've got our varieties straightened out. We've got our field list straightened out. Now we're going to go into building our setup file. The same thing, we're going to setup file creator. And this is really streamlined from the past. Basically has 6 steps that we have to walk through. We can create a new one, or we can create from existing. As you can see, Margot's created a few down here. So if you made a setup file and you forgot a field, or you add a field last minute, you can create from existing and create a new one, so you're not starting over. I'm going to create a new one and choose my display. It's always a good idea to make a descriptive name. And then down on the bottom right-hand corner, sometimes people have their windows tiny and they don't see that button on the bottom. So just hit Start. And now it's just going to walk me through every step. So now it's asking me what fields do I want selected. And this is where we have a few new things here. On the top here, I have AutoPath and Variety Locator. So AutoPath is something new. So if you ran a Gen 4 display on your planter this spring with a receiver on the planter, that display was recording AutoPath lines. And now with the Gen 4 monitor in your combine this fall, as long as you have the automation activation, you can use those pre-recorded lines, actually where the planter was in the field, with your combine. So here's where we first did it. If you don't see this drop-down menu, you need to go into this upper right-hand corner menu, choose the gearbox next to your org name, and then under settings, there's a toggle here for auto path. If that's not on, it's off by default because not everybody's running it. You just hit edit and turn that on, and then that'll show up. So first, I'm just going to select all my fields. Source operation, I'm going to use most recent seeding, because if you did use this on a strip till rig, it would also select that. And this right now, you can see this file. This is something new. This is an auto path pass, but it's giving me an error because Margot, you guys didn't have a start fire on your planter this spring, right?
No, we're kind of a mixed bag yet at our place, so not using AutoPath. Yeah.
Yep. So something we can fix for next year, right?
Yeah, spend a little more money, no problem.
Yeah. So if there is any issues with the AutoPath line, it's going to tell you why. So here there was no Starfire receiver on that implement. Okay. And then also something that we commonly see is if you just uploaded this data, let's say you've had to manually upload data with a USB stick. If there's AutoPath lines, it does take some time for the system to process it. So if you see a gray icon here that says it's still working on processing, you can still check the box here and force it to process, and it'll send the setup file. Okay, so last line on this page, we need to do our variety locator. So it's a good idea to go through here. Now it automatically, because we uploaded our seeding maps, and it automatically chose which crop. Now, if you have a field where you maybe put 2 crops in there, soybeans or corn, you need to pick one. Or if you accidentally recorded a little blip of soybean data in a cornfield, it'll actually flag it here. It won't be selected. See where this one says select crop. I need to actually select the crop that it is. Okay. And it does a good job up top here to give you some errors if it's not cooperating. Okay, so I'm going to hit next. Now we need to choose our machines. So simple enough. If we have machines with JD Link, they're already in here. I'm going to choose my combine, click on implement, and then choose on my heads. If you don't have a JD Link enabled machine, you can click this button on the bottom and add it to your profile. Click next. Now this is asking for all my varieties. I'm just going to filter by varieties here. Choose all. And then finally, if you want to keep track of the operator, that there is a function in the display to choose who's actually operating the machine. That's optional. Okay, now we're at the end. It's giving us a summary of what we've created here. I hit create file, and then the final step is if you do have JD-Link on your machine, you can check the box next to that machine, hit create and send, and it's going to wirelessly send that setup file right to that combine. But I am not going to do that because I'm not going to mess up your combine with junk setup files.
Yeah, I already got them loaded. We're good to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so now it's processing here. If you aren't using JD-Link and wireless data transfer, go to Files. And there is a utility that you can install on your computer. So under this more, it's called John Deere Data Manager. And all it is a simple application that will make it easy for you to load data from Ops Center onto a USB stick or upload data to Operations Center. So something that you can do if you don't have a John Deere monitor for your planter. You can upload non-John Deere data into Operations Center and use that for your variety locator. Yesterday, I helped the salesman walk through the customer on uploading their field view data so they could get variety locator into Operations Center. Okay, so all you do is you check the box. See here, Here, I have a setup file here, and I hit download. It'll ask me desktop or device or John Deere Data Manager, and John Deere Data Manager is the version you want to upload it to the stick. Okay, Margot, did I miss anything there?
I don't think so. I'm kind of looking through our notes here, and I think you pretty much nailed it.
Okay.
So it's my turn, right?
Yeah, it is your turn. Now I will stop sharing here.
All right. I will share my screen. Perfect. Chris, can you see a 4600 simulator?
Yes, I can.
All right. Very
Here,
good.
there you go. Perfect.
Yeah. All right. So we are using a simulator, an online simulator provided by John Deere. It's not perfect, but it'll get us to where we need to go. So I'm going to start. Now we've done all of our office work, and now it's the fun part, right? We get to sit in the combine seat and get things ready to go. Probably one of the first things you're probably going to do when you get in the combine, and maybe you've already done it, is get those headers out and get those calibrated. So I'm going to just show you real quick how to find those calibrations and get those started. So when you get in your combine cab, and maybe even before you hook up your multi-coupler on your head, maybe you got just the head hanging on the combine. If you navigate to the menu button and then under machine settings and go to calibrations and procedures, and then go ahead on down. You got two options here: harvest, which is all going to be machine type calibrations, and header. We'll go ahead and choose header. Prior to hooking up that header, they want us to go ahead and get all of our calibrations done on your feeder house. So your feeder house more than likely has lateral tilt, side to side. That's your contour master that needs to be calibrated from side to side. We can also calibrate out our feeder house raise speed, as well as if you've got the fore aft tilt option now on your combine, you can calibrate that as well. So all of our onboard calibrations are pretty straightforward. They will not let you, if you've got a brand new combine, new head, they do not let you calibrate this header prior to these being done. That's why, but you can't calibrate the feeder house if it thinks the header's hooked up. So, that multiple coupler's hooked up. So now, maybe you don't have a new combine. I always like doing these every year anyway. It's a great way to just do a system check to make sure all your sensors are adjusted in the right voltage ranges for these features to work, right? So we've got features for height sensing and resume and tilt side to side, contour master. We want to use those. So this is a great check, year in, year out with the same combine, same head to make sure it works. Once you get into this, we click on Cal. It's going to walk us through the things that need to happen, head up, head down, wide open throttle, whatever the situation may be to finish the calibration. And of course, if something is out of range, it'll let us know and it'll throw an error code. So that's how we know. And, maybe it's adjusting some sensors to get it into a voltage range or maybe a service call. So, but better now than being stuck when you're ready to go to the field. So that's header calibrations. I think I'll back out of this by using the X to close my overlay here. And I am then going to, once I get my head calibrated, on our page layouts in these new 700 series combines, these are default layouts from Deere. A lot of our apps are accessible from the homepage. So you can access the header from the homepage here, or you can also go back to the menu, machine settings, and header and open up that header app. You can even use the buttons on the bottom of your screen on your armrest as well, those hotkeys. So when it comes to setting up the header, a couple things that get maybe missed is this is a button here where it says flexible draper. If I click on that, it'll give me a little bit more details about the head. First thing to confirm is that our width is accurate for the head. If you're running a 30-foot head, 40-foot head, make sure that all matches. If you're going to be using dial speed feature inside our heads, make sure you got a appropriate minimum reel speed in there. The default might be 10. You might want it to be a little quicker, a little slower. You can adjust that. And then, of course, very important for documentation would be the recording height. So setting that. So that's as simple as using your your feeder house controls up, down over here on your hydro handle. Make sure you got that set appropriately, a little bit higher than where you're going to cut at, but and set that to current, and that will record the stop height for you. So every time you raise, then it should kick off and stop recording your map. So that's where that's hidden at. We also can get out of there by hitting the X for the overlay. And then the next piece is all those things we were calibrating. We want to navigate down to this auto control section of this page and turn on these features. Now, we do have a flaw in our simulator, so this is where I'm going to pop out to my resource guide that you can get on our website, and we'll just walk through the things that we can enable on our John Deere heads. Okay, so probably one more page. There we go. So our auto header controls kind of depends on preferences of what you like to use in the field, but you can, on your hydro handle, tie a lot of the height sensing, resume, contour master, those sort of things to your 1, 2, 3 buttons on the hydro handle. So once we calibrate things out, typically we're going to most always use resume, so we can use those 1, 2, 3 buttons, and the sensing. So when you're using a hydroflex head, this is going to assign certain hydroflex pressures to the number 3 and 2 buttons. Number 1 is usually your raise button. If you want to enable dial-a speed, you can also turn that on. Okay, and dial-a speed is it's going to kind of match your real speed based on your ground speed. If you don't like that, you can certainly turn it off. Fore aft resume. This is if you've got those fore aft tilts on your feeder house. And if you want to have a position for that fore aft, maybe you want it tipped down a little bit more on number 3 and tip back a little bit more on number 2. You certainly can turn that on and enable that with your hydro handle on these buttons as well. And then lastly, reel position resume. Same thing, kind of a preference thing. If you want to have certain reel positions tied to number 3 or number 2 settings on your handle, if you want the reel down and low or up and back, something like that, you can certainly do that as well. So this is just turning on the feature. So you've got to turn on the feature inside that header setup button. And then, of course, the rest of it happens on the armrest on your hydro handle. You got to use your controls to set those things, and it's as simple as pressing and holding number 3 to lock in everything you want in 3, pressing and holding 2 to lock everything you want in 2. At our place, typically 3 is set up for good going. 3 is dropping my head down, might have a little bit more rigid for hydroflex, normal reel position, things like that. Number 2 typically is a little bit more float, a little bit, more float. So if we get into some squishy, muddy things that we're not supposed to be in, we can adjust there. So it's personal preference how you want to set that, but that's how we've done it over the years. Okay, I am back on my simulator here. Let me get back to full screen mode. I think we'll be able to finish out over here. Lastly, there is some sensitivity settings tied to height sensing. So if you feel like your hydroflex is a little jumpy or whatever it may be, you can deaden out the sensitivity here, or the middle is 50. The default on all those sensitivities for raise lower height sensing is 50. So we can adjust those as needed as well. Oh. You can adjust hydroflex pressure here. I usually use the dial on my armrest to adjust hydroflex pressure. I use this, so you hit the hydroflex button here, and then this is the dial that you would, excuse me, you use the AHC dial to adjust your hydroflex pressure when you're setting your 1, 2, 3s. That one right here. Okay, backing out of the header. And I am going to look at my outline so I don't skip a step. Okay, now we got to go back and we've got our header set up. We need to get our data set up that we imported to the machine. So in order to do that, we're going to come back to our menu. We're going to go to System, and then we're going to navigate to the File Manager. Hit File Manager. And so our simulator is not perfect. But when we come to the import option, if you have a JD Link enabled machine, you'll have two options here. Import from USB or import from files received from Operations Center. So simulator only shows us the USB option, but it would look the same way once you hit next here. And this is the setup profile that we created. I would be able to check mark that, hit next, and then it's going to kind of read that data, see what's all in that setup file. Make sure that's selected and then go ahead and import it. So that's how so even if you're sending it wirelessly, it's very important. You still need to go to File Manager and finish the import. It's just on your monitor. It's not loaded in yet until you do this step. So I'm going to back out and cancel because I've already uploaded this for time's sake. One other thing while we're under System is this Software Manager. I'll show you real quickly too. If you're in the yard and you want to check for software updates for your Gen 4 monitor, we can click this Check for Updates Online. So any JD Link enabled machine will be able to check for updates online for the new displays, and pull that over the air, and then you'll be able to install it. So you don't necessarily need to go use a USB and save it from Stellar Support and bring it out that way. So an option as well. There is new version of software out for the Gen 4. It is version 10.20. So if you get looking in your combine, we're looking at OS software version. If you don't have 10.20, it would be maybe to your advantage to get that done. Starfire 6000s are also running on 4.5, and you can use this tool as well to update software on those. Okay, back to the combine. So I always like to start by pulling up some data under the setup section here. So by down in the lower left-hand corner of my shortcut bar, we have a setup screen. This is where we load in. So I've imported the data now. This is where we load in that client farm field information, variety information to make an accurate map. So I have selected, I'll kind of show you how I do this. You can come in here, view all, I want to clear everything, but depending on what field you're headed to first, sometimes it's nice to have a field labeled yard or test if you're going to play around in the yard and check things out. But I'm going to go ahead and click on this farm of ours and select it and say OK. And I've got my location loaded up. Over on the work summary side, we do have beans over there this year. It is a 1-1 variety. I chose that. Now, regarding variety locator, so our simulator has a flaw here as well, but we do have variety locator files, so we would want to select this and go ahead and choose. And what should happen is you'll get a preview of the map that's tied to that field, and you'll be able to say OK and apply it. So unfortunately, I cannot show you that on the simulator, but if we did everything right in the office, it should be waiting for us there with a preview. For the sake of the demonstration, I'm going to pop in a variety just so we know it's going to make a map. Okay, I kind of skipped over this equipment section, but it's very important that initially in the yard, we take a look at this. Once we get this set up, you probably don't have to look at it every time you go in and out of the field. These would be the two areas you're looking at every time you come in and out of a new field. But let's go look at equipment quick and click on that combine. And then when we select that combine, it's going to show us a profile, serial number, and then GPS offsets here. So just want to if you're bringing stuff from the Operations Center and you've loaded your implement offsets in the Operations Center, they should pull right over. If you've just quickly created a machine and a head and you didn't bother putting any offsets in, you may need to still go out and measure and get these entered in here. So measuring a combine is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot to do on a combine. We do need to measure the receiver position in relationship to the front axle, the non-steering axle. So that's what this number 2 option is. We're measuring from our front axle to where our receiver sits. And then also we need to measure how high our GPS receiver sits on top of the cab roof. When I do that one from the ground, I always go to where the green and yellow meet. Then from there, we want to measure out our header. To a couple measurements we want to make there. One will be for our connection offset, and one will be for our work point. Typically, all of our headers are centered, so there's no lateral offset. Work point is going to refer to basically the connection point, so front of the feeder house, right, where we hang our head to the cutter bar. That's going to be that measurement. And then connection offset is going to be from that front axle to the feeder house. Where we're hanging the head. Yeah, and that's pretty straightforward. Just need to make sure those measurements are made, accurate, and entered into the monitor. They are important for just accurate mapping, so we're making a map in the right spot, and accurate coverage, especially if you got more than one combine in the field, sharing coverage. All right, well, I'll navigate away now from setting up the data side of things for the mapping, and we're going to talk about setting the combine under harvest settings here. I'm going to get there from hitting the menu button, maybe, and going to applications. No, excuse me, machine settings and harvest settings. There we go. So inside all our combines, depending on the crop type you have chosen, so we've chosen soybeans, there is default settings, I call them barnyard settings, for all of our combines. You get a couple options these days. So you got default for beans. There we go. And then you got a couple options on threshing. So if we're in some difficult threshing beans, maybe we're still a little green stemmed, we haven't had a frost yet, we can go ahead and tune this a little bit. Yeah. And it will pre-populate let's see if we can get this to go. There we go. A new set of settings for us, right? So this is where my combine currently is set. This is where it's recommending to go based on these default settings. So this is honestly just a place to go to initial set your combine if you left the field in corn and we're coming back into the field this year in beans to get it set for beans. So we hit OK. Everything in the combine is going to adjust. Threshing clearance, speed, fan, chaffer sieve in one Breton press. Okay. Also inside harvest settings, I wanted to show you there's this little tool called outside configuration. It'll walk you through all the things that happen outside the cab, like feeder house drum position, feed accelerator speed, whether we need our separator grate spacers installed on the separator section of the combine, what recommendations we have for the chopper, those sort of things. So your app that we talked about earlier, Equipment Plus, will walk you through those as well. And then lastly, if you've got a new combine, or you want to kind of dial in your loss monitor on your corner post, this is where we set up those bars. So this is nothing you can do in the yard. You got to wait to set to current when you're in the field in crop, and you've kind of tuned in your combine and set your combine, and you're happy with the losses that may be coming out over the back through the shoe or the rotor, and that's where you hit the set to current at that point to get those in line. On a brand new combine, you will get a flashing blue light on your corner post until you do this. So that's why I like to point out where we hide it. We hide it in this harvest settings app. Okay. Now, what we'd like to show you is some of the technology now is tied to this combine, the 700 series combine, inside the Combine Advisor option. So I got a shortcut on my shortcut bar for Combine Advisor. I'm going to navigate there by hitting Menu and then Applications and Combine Advisor. And if you need a little help setting your combine, You know, and once you get your default settings set and you get out into crop and you're setting for soybeans, we'll say, and you feel like you're struggling, maybe threshing out pods, or maybe you're struggling with something going over the shoe, depending on what you're seeing during a power shutdown, you can utilize this app to maybe help you with the next step. If you're not sure if you should be closing down the combine or turning down the fan, we can always hit optimize performance and work through this. I call this a flow chart because that's what it is. It used to be a flow chart we would put on a nice card in the cab. If you remember back in the good old days of 50, 60 series combines, it's now an app in your monitor. The what I would caution here is depending on what you're seeing in your tank sample, what you're seeing on the ground, let's only chase one problem at a time. Okay. Focus on one thing at a time and make those adjustments for that problem at a time. But depending on what you're seeing, so let's say maybe we're seeing a lot of foreign material in the tank. We can kind of rate what that looks like. It's going to recommend us kicking up the fan. Okay. So if that's something you want to do, you can go ahead and hit apply and it will do that for you. Okay. So if it's not what you want to do, there is more options here. It's talking about increasing, I would say, it should be saying decrease save. I'm having a little bit of a delay here on my monitor. So, but that's the optimized performance button is there to help you tune in the combine, and it will make the it'll give you a recommendation to make that adjustment for you. You're still responsible for monitoring the tank, monitoring the losses, and verifying if what we're doing um, is solving your problem.
Yep. And like you said, Margot, chase one problem at a time, and that form material, I think there was like 5 or 6 things options it gave you, like make one setting change at a time too, right?
Right. So make one change at a time, and just like you would if you were doing it on your own, right? So this is nothing probably different or new to us that have been running combines for several years, but it is a tool out there if you would like to use it. So once we get our combine set, whether we use the optimized performance option or we just, drove in crop and did our field checks and tuned in our machine. But once we start seeing a clean tank sample, we're happy with how our losses are and everything is acceptable, this is when we can start turning on some of the automation features that we have inside the Combine Advisor app. So we have 3 features. I'm going to talk about this Harvest Smart last, but let's talk about the next 2 first. So Active Terrain is an automatic kind of side hill management system that we can turn on these combines. And then Auto Maintain is automation related to once we get our combine set and we set a target. Combines that have loss sensors on the shoe, loss sensors on the rotor, and the addition of cameras on their clean grain auger and their tailings system. Those things together will look at your sample and your losses continuously through the field once you turn this on and set this target. And if it sees something deviate from what you set as the target for a consistent amount of time, it's going to make an adjustment. If it thinks it might think it needs to, like the scenario would be maybe we're threshing out beans and it's getting to the end of the day, or a dew's kind of coming in, moisture's changing in the air. Pods are more difficult to thresh. It sees more unthreshed pods in the clean grain sample. It might go ahead and close down your concave clearance for you. So that is the automation that this combine can do once we get the target set and the system turned on. So if we hit set performance target, so back to I've set my combine. things are looking really good. I'm happy with its performance. I'm going back and forth in a pretty consistent part of the field. You're never going to set a performance target on the headland. You want to be, in that going back and forth kind of mode, consistent flow. When you hit set performance target, it's going to look at those systems and look at that target. It might take anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. Sooner, it'll be quicker if you're in that consistent crop. Once you get that target set, then we can toggle on that auto maintain. This is just warning me that it's going to, that I need to set my target. I hadn't hit the button yet. So, but once we turn this on, it's going to look at that target. And this is kind of what it's going to look like in the cab. You'll get a progress bar that comes across, and this will spin until it's complete. Okay, so our status right now for auto maintain is not ready. Once it is, this target is set and complete, it'll go to ready status.
Yep. And a common thing that we hear on some of the earlier 7 Series combines is there is no progress bar. It's just a spinning, can't remember, spinning blue wheel, I think.
Yep.
And it doesn't give you an indication of how much longer it's got to go. So just let it do it. Let it do its thing.
Yeah. And it's also important to stay in that consistent crop and do not make any adjustments over here. Why it's setting its target. Okay. Because if we change a parameter, it's kind of bringing it back to step 1. Okay. Under active terrain adjustment, once we get everything kind of set here, I like to turn this on. And this is pretty automatic. There's some tweaking though that you can do by in all 3 cases here, we toggle the feature on and make it active on the left. And then over here on the right, these are all buttons as well. So if I hit to the right side of the on off for active terrain, hopefully my page will load here. This is where you can adjust some sensitivities and also adjust some defaults, like where you want it, how you want it to adjust. So when the idea with active terrain, I wonder if I should just pop back over to my guide if it's not going to load. We'll turn this off and just come in. Maybe there we go. So with active terrain, it's using your TCM calibration on your receiver to know kind of where you're at for if you're going up, down a hill. And we have some sensitivity settings here. So 0 to 10 for uphill sensitivity versus downhill sensitivity. And essentially what's going to happen is it's going to adjust chaffer and sieve. It's going to adjust the chaffer 2 points when it sees itself going uphill, sieve 1, or downhill. And then it's going to manage the fan with 40 RPM increments up or down, depending on which direction you're going, right? So if you're going up a hill, it's probably going to decrease your fan. If you're going down a hill, it may increase your fan. So if you don't like these can be tweaked. Adjust the step size, adjust the increments here for chaffer and sieve, or just let this be. These are the defaults, and adjust the sensitivity. I don't want it to be adjusting quite so much. You can dial that down. So that's how John Deere is now managing grain loss up and down a hill. On the auto maintain side of things, I'll show you this. Once you get this turned on, you can set some overall aggressiveness of the system. So I mentioned that in general, it's got to see if you drive through a little bottom and it's a little wet there and the crop was a little bit different, it's not going to change. Okay. And, if it's a 50-foot stretch or 100-foot stretch, whatever it may be, it's a variety change, right? It's a consistent weather change or field condition change that will drive this system to start adjusting the combine settings for whatever it's seeing. If you want to make this more or less aggressive, though, happen sooner, not wait as long, or wait longer, that's what this number will adjust. And then lastly, down here, based on specific issues like losses, broken grain, or foreign material, you can make it more or less sensitive to specific issues. So if you're having a lot of trouble with broken grain and you want to make it more sensitive there, you can certainly do that. So those are some of those settings that you can adjust as well. And if you're ever kind of lost in any of these, because this is a lot to remember, just know that you can hit this I button and this will open up the book and it'll give you some descriptions and some a little bit of reading so you can maybe make the right choice or the right adjustment. So like I said, when everything is on, we're going to have green statuses over here and hopefully ready. The last thing that I need to talk about, and usually the last thing that I will turn on when I'm starting a combine will be Harvest Smart. So Harvest Smart, I'll kind of click on the information next to it for tuning. Harvest Smart is a feature that's tied to both grain loss and engine load or engine power. And it will essentially adjust your ground speed based on maintaining that target loss and a target engine load. Okay, so this is something that has been around since like 9870 combines in 2011. It's had a big overhaul in the S700 series combines, and if you've not used it over the years, I would encourage you to turn it on and get her set. So you can basically set in a target engine load. I'm going to probably have a hard time adjusting it right now because of the simulator, but maybe you want to run at 90% engine load. Okay. And you want to make sure we always manage our grain losses. You can then set up a upper speed limit. I don't want this thing to travel any more than 5.5 miles an hour, maybe. And once you turn this on and maybe you've been combining at 4.5 and it thinks it can go 5, it will adjust your ground speed as long as you stay within those load parameters, loss parameters, 5 miles an hour. So there's an opportunity with Harvest Smart to gain some efficiency, gain some productivity in the machine, and not necessarily run it the way we've always run it. Okay. What I will say about Harvest Smart is once you turn it on, it's resumed. It used to be resumed with your number 2 button, or your 3 or 2 button. Now it is dedicated to its own button on the arm or on the hydro handle. It's on letter B over here from the factory. I had a customer the other day that said he moved it to letter E. He wanted it right here. So maybe I'm putting the head down on number 2 for my resume. I'm going to resume my auto track, and then I'm going to hit letter E to resume my Harvest Smart. So these buttons are configurable under the controls section of your monitor to put different things in different places.
And one tip too, Margot, for all these automation features, sometimes it's kind of hard to see the benefit of having them turn on or off. There is a homepage option where you can actually put bushels per hour, like actual current throughput, so instant throughput, where a lot of the metrics are averages, so whole field averages, which is kind of hard to see that instant difference. So just maybe when we get done here, we can show that option on how to look it up. Yep.
Yeah. So one of the things why we're here under Combine Advisor, so you do get a live feed, and one of your home pages for the Combine will give you a live feed on those cameras. Inside Combine Advisor, I would turn on this grain analysis option. It will actually highlight, we kind of lost our input here, but it will actually highlight on the screen what it's identifying as a broken grain, an unthreshed grain, or foreign material with these colors. So it kind of, and it's taking samples, out of your clean grain auger, periodically. I can't tell you quite how many every seconds it's doing it, but so this camera view will cycle in and out with different samples. So I think I'm going to leave this, but when everything is turned on, you're going to have basically, they're going to all be kind of in a ready or a monitoring status. And then when something changes and it decides, so when you go up a hill and it decides to slow down your fan, you'll see a little blue wheel here when it's adjusting your fan. And then of course you'll see this fan speed light up blue because it changes blue when it's adjusting. Same thing with the auto maintain. If it decides we need to close a concave, you'll get a little blue spinning wheel here, and then you'll see the concave clearance change. You can also come back to this history button, and if you want to know why it's making a change, if you go to this active section here, so you see something changing and it's blue. Well, why? I'm a curious person. So what did it see? What's automated about it that is prompting the adjustment? And that will show you here under this history section. This is a fun system to get turned on and let it work. The only caution I'll make is that we just need to make sure we've got our combine dialed in and have that performance target set prior to turning it on. So Chris mentioned, so these counters up here are all configurable. So you can come into any of these readings, and if you would, you have work monitor readings and machine monitor readings. So throughput on the combine, I think is work actually. We hit next. And then, yeah, we like to set up, I always like to set up some instant moisture and instant yield, and then this instant productivity one. So a lot of times I'll set up our combines with this instant product. Oh, excuse me, not acres per hour. Go down.
Yeah, I think it's further down. Yep.
The throughput one. Acres per hour is kind of fun too, but as you can see, your instant throughput per hour. So how many bushels are we pushing through at any given point in time, with these systems on versus these systems off, the old-fashioned way. And then, yeah, I usually always like to see this instant. I like to put on about any screen instant yield and instant moisture as well on these counters. Okay. Well, we are wrapping up we got about, I'm going to like 5 minutes here. I'm going to show you a few things to make sure we have on for guidance. And I think Chris was going to wrap up with some information about JD Link. So kind of got through setting the combine. We do have a guidance shortcut on our combine here. I'm not going to go into all the details necessarily of how to set a AB line. Of course, I brought some lines over, so it's looking at some lines I have in this field. But typically when we get moved to corn, we get a lot of phone calls on how to turn on my row sense and make sure that's all working. So John Deere hides a whole lot of good stuff up here inside this advanced settings button in the header of the app. So when you click on auto track guidance, you open up the app, you get the basics of setting a track, shifting, maybe adjusting your sensitivities over here, turning on the system. You got all that, but inside this button here, it's a whole bunch of other things to make sure you have access to. So for row sense, okay, you're going to want to make sure we toggle on our row sense. And then under status and settings, this is where you actually will calibrate the sensors down here with this cal button. So once you hook up your corn head, I would always come in here and do this, enable it and turn on the cal. It's just a button press. It's going to watch and look at your sensor voltage on those feelers when it's sitting still, not in crop. Okay, like basically it's 0 point. So that's where that's at. If you decide that later on you need to apply an offset on your row sense system because it feels like it's pulling one way or the other, you've got that option in here as well. Of course, it's giving me some messages right now because I'm not sitting in crop. So that's what you're looking at here. You got two options for row entry mode. I would say if you manually steer in, you're going to have to hit your resume twice to enable your row sense. If you're using GPS steer, you're going to have to hit your resume once. So essentially, it's going to resume based on your AB line and your row sense together under GPS mode. With manual mode, it's kind of a two-press thing. We're going to go in and need to hit that twice. Also know that when you're looking at row sense, remember that these guys need to be green. If you're not got your status at green, you're not using both your AB line and your feeler. If your status goes to orange, you're just using a feeler. If it goes to yellow, you're just using, I might have that backwards. It's just GPS. I think I have that right. If you don't know, it'll tell you up here in the information button. So I got it right. So that's a little bit on row sense once you get going in corn. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out is just make sure under menu, and most combines by default have this on, but under applications and then overlap control, make sure your master is on. I even had this set up on my shortcut key, but with this on, if you start taking in a half width, a half full head, maybe you're cleaning up some odd rows or whatever the situation may be, it will auto adjust based on your coverage, right? So if you've got a 30-foot head and you're only taking 20 feet right now, with that master on, it's going to auto adjust that working width or that cut width, and also auto adjust your yields. So just make sure it's for better accuracy, right?
Yeah.
So just make sure that is on.
And especially if you're doing in-field data sharing.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. So if you got more than one combine, if you've got your sharing on with more than one combine, you want to also make sure your overlap control's on, because then it'll also look at the other combine's coverage, not just the one that you're in. Well, I did not go too deep into yield calibration today. Just same spot though where we were before. Menu, applic, nope, okay, machine settings, and then calibrations and procedures under harvest. For those combines with the active yield, the procedure is pretty non-eventful. We just need to turn it on and gather samples. Just understand that we need to have good flow, and it will take maybe upwards to 10 good samples to get the quality up. And if we're going to start benchmarking the active yield system, and we want to start comparing the active yield system, for totals in the machine versus what maybe we're scaling at the elevator, I would definitely do this on a field by field basis versus a load by load basis, because this is a auto calibration system. It is a moving target. It will change and adjust based on the different loads and samples that we get accepted into the system, and it does take time for it to dial on.
We did have a great testimonial customer last year that was trying to compare it load by load and was kind of frustrated. But when he was done at the end of the year, totaled everything up, I think he said it was within 0.3% off?
Yeah.
1,500 acres of corn. So set it and forget it.
If for some reason you want to do a manual yield calibration, it's still here for us down here. You'll have to turn off the active yield to navigate to that. So our resource guides online dive into pretty deep into the procedure on these as well. Well, I think that kind of wraps up the things I wanted to hit on the monitor. It is 2 o'clock. Chris, I'll probably hand it back to you and let you talk a little bit about our promotions, or what Deere's doing with JD Link, and some of our promotions for some of the other machines on the farm with 4G MTGs.
Yeah. So just a couple things. If you go back to kibbleq.com and hit Precision Ag and specials, and then hit Precision Ag, we are continuing our 4G upgrade program. If you aren't aware, AT&T, who's the cellular provider for JD Link, is turning off 3G service at the end of this year. So we do have a pretty aggressive program to upgrade those machines that have 2 or 3G machines. You can do it for as low as $200 installed by Kibble. There is some caveats there if we need to use a different Ethernet cable to get them connected, but we have a lot of machines yet to go. So if you're not sure if you had a 3G or 2G machine, please contact your service department or your sales person. They can look that up for you. But there's never been a better time to upgrade now and continue to have all those benefits of JD Link and wireless data transfer. And then the big thing that just changed this summer with John Deere used to be $300 per machine per year to keep that machine lit up and flowing data automatically up into the operations center. Deere has now made that free. The one caveat though is you need to log into your Operations Center account and approve that you want that free service. Again, if you aren't aware how to do that or you're struggling, please reach out to your salesperson and they can walk you through it. It's a pretty painless process. It just takes about 5 clicks, and then JD-Link is free going forward with all machines going into your account. So yeah, that's all I had. Again, this recording will be put up on our website. And if you have any other questions or comments, we might send out a survey to those of you that attended and just get feedback on any other topics you'd like to see in the future. So anything else, Margo?
Did we have any questions or anything in the chat?
No, I didn't see any questions come through the chat. So we had a pretty quiet crew here today. So
well, thank you everybody for attending.
Yes, thank you very much. Be safe and have a good harvest.